Okay, I believe we are live. Welcome everyone to another XAFer community stand-up. We meet the second Thursday of every month to discuss about XAF, XPO, and our personal projects, experience, and everything that we want to talk about. We are an event by the community and for the community, and we are glad to have you all here. I will start sharing my screen. So the first thing that I wanna start our meetup with is we are part now of the .NET Foundation Virtual User Group. So please visit that link right there. You can find virtual user group happening all around the globe. Everything especially is focused on .NET, and there are a lot of nice events there. So please take a look, go there, and find some event that you will enjoy and attend. From there, this will be, sorry, let me show the post. This will be our agenda today. We're gonna do a quick introduction. Pretty much everybody should know DevExpress MVP, Dave and Jose. Manuel, I guess he should have an emergency today, and I don't think that he will be joining us. Hopefully he will, but in the meantime, we're gonna do a quick introduction. Then we have some couple announcements and few demos, and then we're gonna go directly to the topic of today, that is talking about best practices, how we use our SAF application, what we have seen in all of years developing in SAF. As always, I encourage everyone to join our Facebook group. We are already 485 members. Let's make it 500. Let's make it 1,000. Right here, we can discuss. We can post our questions. We can get assistance from other members. As a community, we are stronger together. I know Facebook is not for everyone. There are a few people that doesn't like to be on Facebook, and that's understandable. We also are in LinkedIn. So we have the developer SAF group on LinkedIn. Join there. Follow SAF on Twitter. Or we also have our Gitter, so you can also, in a chat way, ask your question, show your experience. And let me try to hide this panel that is in the middle of the, okay, right here. Subscribe to SAFer Weekly. We try to collect all the links happening in the week about SAF and send a weekly email, so you have a weekly collection of everything that is happening in the SAF world. We started also Awesome SAF, and I will really appreciate the contribution of the community here. It will be a repository. It's based on Awesome Blazor and Awesome Xamarin, where we're gonna have everything related to SAF, everything that is important. We have here the documentation for DevExpress, the demos. We have here the blog post from our MVPs. We have all podcasts, and this Oliver Store, when that's a really nice old podcast, but it's exactly in the 2007 when SAF was just starting. So this I highly recommend it. So you know the story of this framework that we like and love. We have the book of Martin Fowler of Pattern of Enterprise Application Architecture. This is the book that actually XPO was based on. They follow all the best practices there, so highly recommended. And there are more courses, community links. If you need consulting, if you need jobs, if you want a YouTube. And I want to break this down. I want to put localization. These are the links from localization. I want to put DevOps, links from DevOps, and everything else. We can make this repository as comprehensive as possible. And before going any further, I will want Dave from Yamachan and Jose to introduce themselves. Most probably everybody knows who they are, but if you are new and you are joining us for the first time, please, Dave or Jose, whoever want to start.
Dave, your turn.
Sounds good, thank you. Yeah, Dave from Lamachan Technology. We're up here in Canada, using XAFs since its release in the end of 2007, using DevExpress tools a little bit before that. Thank you for bringing our website up. We have code snippets. We have a free framework kind of add-on available. Check it out. We also do consulting and some training on the side and some custom development. So need anything, feel free to reach out.
Great. So, well, I guess it's my turn. My name is Jose Ojeda. Everyone knows me by Hochi, actually. That was my childhood nickname. And, well, what we do in Bit Frameworks is that, basically we develop frameworks for whatever platform it is. So one of our products is a synchronization framework for XPO, where you can synchronize data between databases, and they don't even have to be the same type of database. You know, the power of XPO. So basically what we have also is we do custom development and training, enterprise training. So I guess most of the people around here have seen like some of my articles. So, well, if you have any doubts or you want to talk about SAF, we offer a free support hour there. You can see the link. Javier, can you like move the mouse over the link? It's like really obvious, but it's there. Yeah. So if you want to make want to have a consulting hour with us, you can go there and click and schedule it, and we will gladly like talk about your project.
Oh, perfect. So moving forward, Manuel, again, he should have an emergency and everything, but this is his blog. I had it on my note. He's developing a new testing framework. Take a look. It seems really interesting. And as he said, he wants to make unit testing. I don't even know how to pronounce that. A thing. So that sounds pretty interesting. In a couple notes, the Express released a new documentation for unit tests and easy tests. So they really put the time to organize and make it more discoverable. So please take a look. And SAFer training as well has 2 new courses on testing. A course for easy tests and a course for unit tests. So if you are interested in that, please take a look. If you have several applications deployed, you cannot afford to not test your application. From there, we are going to move. I wanted to show something quickly. We have our post on the Facebook group about our suggestion for the next community stand-up. I want to show quickly that if we go here, and from here we start seeing, okay, we are going to talk best practices this focus, and we have the question from Genesis about setting up multiple roles and filtering role-based data. We'll get to that. We have German talking about using SAF as a backend as SAF. We talk about the last one, and we have XPO offline sync that Jose was talking about. So as you see, we're trying to cover everything with us. So again, get involved in the community. There is a power of being together, and everything that is us, we are trying our best to accommodate that and discuss them. So the last question in there is about the expand framework. So how to use the expand framework in a 60 project. The first thing that I want to add about that, and I put it here in the post, is Apostolic join your Facebook group. So you guys feel free to ask any question you want. But in my series of videos about the module SAF of the week, I'm going to cover expand later in the future. So at some point, we're going to get to this and we're going to review all expand framework modules. So stay tuned for that. And in that same note, I want to do a quick, I know that everybody here is in English based, but I want to make a quick moment to be thankful for the Spanish community. They have reached out to me and they are actually helping me to translate some of the SAF module videos in English to Spanish. So we're going to fill the gap of SAF knowledge in Spanish as well. We're going to make SAF not only, we want to make it worldwide. So again, thank you. I just want to say that for just a second. I'm really excited about that. And I'm also excited about the people that have reached out about the community stand-up. We're doing this for the community and by the community. So with that out of the way, Jose, are we able to do the XPO offline sync demo, or you were having some issues? You were
well, you know how it is, the demo effect. My computer just died like 10 minutes ago, and my hard drive died, and it was a solid state drive. I mean, I've been carrying it with me like for 5 years, so it just turned off and it's dead. I'm using another computer, but at least I want to show the flow. So I might not be able to run the unit test to show how it works. I know that some people here I see the people who is in the meetup, and some of them are using it already. So for them it will be easier to understand. But in any case, I will show the presentation, and then I guess I will post a video on my YouTube channel, maybe later today. with the technical demo. So let me share my screen.
And before Jose starts showing the screen, I want to say something. Every questions, don't be shy. Post any question. Feel free to leave it on the chat. We're gonna get to all the questions at some point in the meetup. So please let us know if you have any doubt of what we are talking about. We want to be as inclusive as possible. So Jose, I'm gonna stop sharing and I will pass it to you.
Okay, so you need to allow me share. I cannot share at the moment.
Yeah, just a second. Done.
Okay, so let's see. Let me know when you can see my screen.
I can.
Okay, perfect. So basically, we've been working like for a long time. Actually, Dave was originally like, we talked about this like 6 years ago. I don't know how long time was, but basically, a lot of people come to us and reach us because they want to do offline synchronization. Basically, what they want to have is they want to have an office that is disconnected from the main server, and what they want to do is basically work all day and then synchronize the data at night somehow. So let's see. Oh, good. Not even the PowerPoint is here. So hold on. I think you know how it is. Like, I prepared the demo. I went to sleep. Everything was fine. Then you turn on the computer, and your disk is gone. So hold on. Let's see. Maybe I have it here. Yeah. The beauty of OneDrive.
A requirement was actually requested by one of our clients, like you said, about 6 years ago, who had XAF being used on a local server out on fishing vessels.
Yeah, well, I guess we know. I mean, I don't know if you're talking about Michael from.
Yes.
Yeah, well, it was because of him that this all started.
Yeah.
I did like 20 or 50 implementations of synchronization, and then I realized it was impossible to do it if you do it based on your business logic, if you're doing basically on your data. So basically, we decided that there is a better way to do it. And we reached the top of the implementation like 2 or 3 years ago with Javier, when we did an implementation for tracking trucks. So all of them were offline totally. They were using Xamarin. They were using Xamarin locally. And then they do the synchronization whenever they have connection. So basically, these are the scenarios that we're covering. Hold on, let me hide this. Yeah. So these are the scenarios. The first one, and this is the first one that we created, is that you have a master database wherever in Azure, Amazon, AWS, or your own server under your desktop. So basically, you have your server there where the data is living, and then you have clients. In this case, the clients are mobile, as basically Xamarin Forms. So what they do have is that each database is tracking the operations that is happening. So it creates something that is called the deltas, which is the difference between the main database and the client database. So when it is done by the end of the day or whatever time you want, you just send those deltas to the server. And when you get those deltas in the server, you process them, and all the changes will happen like as they happen in the server. So actually, the code is really simple. The implementation is like 5 lines. So this is the mobile scenario. And let's see some stuff about the scenario that are good to know. Like in synchronization, the only time where the source of truth is complete, where all the data is complete, is where all the clients have processed all the deltas. So everyone will be a copy of the master. At that moment, everyone have the same type of data. Then no one should write directly to the master. I mean, you learn that in in production when you know that, okay, the master is just another client. So we have not only spent time on and we leave it as open as you can do it, because we learned that everyone have their own technique or their own business logic that they want to put into the synchronization. So in that sense, like, we have a really open framework where you can do the synchronization whenever you want, actually. So let's go to the next case, and then we will see a little bit of code. I will not run it because I don't have all the references in this computer, and I wasn't able to compile it on time.
Yeah, but we're gonna hold you to the video later on.
Yeah. So basically, this is the other scenario that is, in this case, you don't want to synchronize mobile applications, you want to synchronize the complete office. So here you have Office A and Office B, and you have all the clients in the office. So all of these are writing data to the server that they have locally in the office by XPO or API, for example, or WCF. So whenever those clients are writing to the database, we are creating the deltas also. So then you send the deltas to the server, and that's it. Then you do all the synchronization flow. And let me show you the implementation, which is really simple. That is what I'm most proud of, is that implementing synchronization, well, you know more than anyone, Javier, it's like thousands of lines if you want to do it by your business logic. But if you want to do it by deltas, it's like quite simple. So let me go off here. And usually when we test this framework with our customers, what we do is we give them a copy of the demo solution, I mean of the main source code. And here we have the test, because if there is something that Apostol is, Dennis, and everyone is pushing, it's like you have to test your code. You need to be able to replicate your code and make sure that what you're giving to the client is stable. And when you create a new version, that it will actually run, and you can prove it because you have the test, right? So in here we have the data store test. So basically what we do is we create a special connection string that will allow XPO to track the difference between databases. So in this class, this is what we give to all the customers. It's like, okay, if you want to test how the provider is working, well, you just run the unit test, and you will see all the methods that are necessary or important for the framework to work. Then we have something that is called the integration test. This is like more interesting because I will just guide you through the flow, which is like nice. So first you create some services. You will use those services internally. Not a big deal, just a new variable. Then you create two connection strings. In this case, CNXA and CNXB represents different offices or different devices. So then you create a data store for A and for B. Once you have the data store, you set up the data layer. To do this, you go here to definition, and this is basically the updater code. It will create the schema and so on, so on, so on. But the most interesting part here is that if you see this code, you can, since you have access to the data store, you can enable and disable tracking of your operations. So that means that even though you're synchronizing data, you can turn it off at any moment. And after that, you will like stop saving deltas. For what is that? Sometimes you don't want to replicate the creation of the database, the initial data that you're putting in the database, you don't want to replicate also. Or sometimes you have like really heavy process, like let's say you are a bank or a financial institution, and by the end of the day, you want to calculate the interest of each loan. That you might not need to log. You don't want to log the data on how you did it. So you can turn it off at any time. So let's go back. So once you have done that, once you have the data layers done, here we have like a really simple code. We create a unit of work with the data layer A, which represents device A or office A, and then we create 2 records, and then we commit the changes. Then we do the same with the office B or device B, unit of work, and then we create 2 records. Then we commit the changes again. So both places have 2 records, and those records are different. So then what you need to do is that you need to go and ask the data layer A and the data layer B, give me your deltas, give me the difference between you and the main database. Then you basically just send it to the server processes them, and then you ask again to the data layers, tell me which was the last difference that you processed from the server. And I ask both A and B. So basically they will both get what they don't have. So after that, you just, after you get the deltas from the server, you just process them. And then basically all database at this moment, after this line, are completely synchronized. So here, if we do the assert, you will see that in every connection, the main server or the master and database A and B, all of them will have 4 records actually, because they cross each other, the values. So just to finish, because since I cannot run the code, it's like really difficult to show how it works. I will just show how do you implement the server on the server side. And basically, we follow the design pattern of ASP.NET Core. So we create services extensions. So in here, if you have used ASP.NET Core, you get this method, configure services. So in here, we have some boilerplate code to delete the database and make sure that everything is clean. But basically, the only line that you need to implement to add offline synchronization to your application is this line. And it's really easy. You just add or nugget. That will give you an extension. With this extension, you add XPO offline services, offline data sync, sorry. And that will include it in the services that ASP.NET Core is running. And you just need to pass 2 connection strings. One for actually the data, and the second one is for the deltas, for the difference between databases. And after that, I mean, this is the only line that you need. Everything else is boilerplate code, and I have comments there that I will explain those in the video that I will do for the YouTube channel. Those are just safeguards that you should run to make sure that your schema is created, that everything is clean. But basically, in a normal application, you will just need to add this line.
Jose, we have questions about the sync framework. Is what happens if you have auto-incremented keys?
Well, if you have auto-incremented keys, you can still replicate them as long as you have a class that handles that. Actually, I was talking with one of our interns. His name is Andres. He do a lot of questions all the time, but really cool guy. He asked me about the auto-numeric, because everyone wants to do invoice 1, invoice 2, invoice 3, and they actually use an integer key for that. So if you're using integer keys or auto-numeric keys, XPO, they do have an example somewhere there, like 10 years old example, even older than that, where they do, where they create a sequence server using XPO. So they don't depend on the database mechanism to generate the last +1. So if you want to use the sync framework and you want to have integer keys, basically you just need to implement the sequence number generator that XPO present on that example, and it will work, because everything will be, even the numbers will be generated on an XPO way. So it will go in the replication. Actually, we do have NuGet. Is still not in our open source framework, but we will publish it soon, I think, that do that, that generates the next integer key and handles the locking system and so on. So since a lot of people is using integer keys somehow, I guess that will be a nice addition for the Sync framework, so everyone can make it work. Because usually the best design pattern for this is to use OIDs, like read type of keys, because those don't depend on the database to be replicated. You just create a new based on time. So it's possible. You need to do some arranges yourself, but it's not like a lot of code, maybe like 2 classes and a few lines, and you can use integer keys. In general, I don't recommend it, but if you have to use it, it's there. You just need to make sure that the numbers are generated correctly, and that's it. You do your own test, unit test or integration test, and after that, I think that it will actually work like fine, exactly. So just to finish, after you add the services to the ASP.NET Core application, you just need to create one controller. So basically here we have the Sync controller. The Sync controller should inherit from Sync controller base, and you will have to have a special constructor, which is this. The IDE will force you to implement the constructor. And then basically, that's it. You just implement this and it will just be working. And I put this code here and it's an override. So you can understand that you can override those methods, but they don't need to be overridden. So basically, to implement the controller to make the synchronization, you just need to make something like this. It's basically like, I will say like 2 lines, this and this, and that's it. Synchronization will be working. So it's kind of magical. If you've been doing synchronizations based on your business logic, I guess you should have a lot of code to handle that, to handle the structure, to handle the time, to handle a lot of stuff. So it's not sustainable and it's not easy to replicate. Whenever you create a new project, you need to create your own synchronization code based on your logic again. In this case, it's generic. This will work for basically every SAF application or XPO application that you have done. And also we include another example. In the example is basically the implementation of this controller. So it's an implementation made by hand. So you don't inherit from a special controller. You just write the code that is needed. So in here, you can see the implementation again is less than 100 lines, counting the empty lines in the middle. So it's like maybe like 25 lines. So still like really, really easy. And just before I finish, because this is basically what I wanted to show, in the last meetup, I show XPO Web API. So we have a question from one of our customers. Well, there is one person who is evaluating the Sync framework who asked if what will happen because his solution is based on WCF. So when you have WCF and then you have a Web API, then you will have a mix of flavor of network connectivity. WCF is their own beast, quite complicated sometimes. And then you have Web API, which is more simple. So even though that is not public, well, it's public, but there is no documentation for that, we do have a framework to communicate with the server to invoke remote methods. So if you were doing that using WCF, you will be able to do that, not using XPO or API, but one of the part of the Sync framework that is called network data transfer, where you can implement it in different protocols. In what was the name of the protocol for Google? They implement protobuf or something like that, which
gRPC.
gRPC, exactly. We can do it through Web API. So there are like several network protocols that we can handle actually. So we're like a mini WCF replacement. I mean, you can communicate the stuff using Web API, but then you can use all those other protocols, at least 3 or 4 protocols. That is nice because it's a modern way that you can include .NET Core in your application. You can use Linux, Mac OS, whatever you want. And you can decide which protocol you want to communicate your XPO application with your database server. You can use gRCP, WebSockets, web API, so you name it. We have included a lot of flavors there. So in general, like I will make an example maybe later next week about something like that, because we have it internally in our code. We use it a lot, and we spend a lot of time developing that because we know that client-server communication needs to be secure and relatable. So I guess I will put it on the note for the next. I have a few videos, or I had a few videos in my computer that I didn't publish, but who knows if my disk is going to recover. So
also, we have another question on the chat about the possibility to limit the data that you send to the client. They say that the client might not need all the data that is on the master database.
It's possible also. We don't, at the moment, we don't have access to the deltas. I mean, there is no API, there is no method that do that. But for the customers who already have this framework working, when they get it with the complete source code. So doing a modification like that is not like super difficult. We can point it, the customer, okay, you should go and take this variable, and in this variable will be the changes that you did. So you can analyze them and clean them as you want or edit them. It's not part of the framework because we don't believe that that is a core part of the framework. But since they have the source code, they can do it quite easily. I would say like in less than 100 lines.
And we also have support for the encryption. So
also there's another beauty of this is that when you save the delta, you can encrypt it, scramble it in any way that you want. So you will add even a stronger layer of security in the transmission of the code, the data and the deltas, and also in the storage of the data. So even for mobiles, we have a special SQLite. For example, if someone is using XPO on Xamarin Forms, or just in Xamarin in general, we do have a special XPO provider that will cipher the database in the mobile, so it will not be readable for persons who connect if they don't have the encryption key. So we can make it really secure even in like iPhones, Android devices. So yeah, we can include we can include another layer of security with ciphering and encryption.
Okay, perfect. So Jose, we are going to hold you to that video later on this week, so definitely you have to put something there. And a couple more comments about what we were talking about. As we have XAFer weekly, so we can send the relevant information about the week that is happening in XAFer, XPO, etc. There is also the WebAssembly weekly, and one of the issues this week was gRPC and Blazor WebAssembly. So I recommend everyone to take a look at that article. It's really nice, and it's another way to transfer data. So we are going to add gRPC to our XPO API later on in the future. So from there on, Jose, if you can stop sharing, so I can share my screen, and we go from there. And please, everybody, again, as always, I encourage everyone to keep asking questions, to keep being involved. Let me share my screen for just a second, and we go from there. So this was the moment that we're going to do some tasty demo about the tasty framework that Manuel is developing, but we're going to skip that because he's not here. I'm pretty sure he will make a video, or he will do it in the next meetup. So we're going to jump straight to the questions of best practices. And the first one will be, and we have in our XAFers training, we get this question a lot, like especially for beginners. They are like, where do I put my business logic? Should I put it on the setter of the property? Should I put it on the controller? Having don't change. Best approach. What is the, like, most of the time beginners, they like a recipe of going forward. And for us that we have been developing in XAFer for a long time, like anybody jump. If I don't want to see, like Dave, Jose, which would you say will be your go-to?
Okay, I will start with this. So basically, then it's always put like a lot of emphasis on this. It's like the objects should be on charge, the XPO objects of getting and setting the data. That's it. You should have minimum business logic in the class, but that's not always possible, and you know it. I mean, sometimes you just need to do, you need price per quantity or something like that. Something that easy, you can do it, but I will think about it if my logic requires additional data loaded. I will not put it in the class. I will put it maybe in a helper class that wrap that class, but I will not put it in there because you are like making the class file more dirtier. And then you're triggering stuff when you don't want. The most complicated about event-based stuff is that most of the time they will trigger when you don't want them to trigger. So everyone tell me like, yeah, use the change, use the change, use the change. I try to don't do it that much unless you have to show the calculation on the screen, like price per quantity is the easiest example. I usually do everything like in a batch-based manner. So let's say that we have a list view of invoices. So all of them will implement iProcess, an interface that I created to make sure that it's processed. And then I will have an action that should be enabled or disabled depending on that state. And I will trigger the logic sometimes in the view controller or in a helper class, depending on that. But I try to avoid in general events for triggering logic. So I would say like if it's small, put it in the business object, in the XPO object. If it's bigger, maybe put it in a helper class. And actually, here I want to highlight something. If you're writing the code in the handler of the action, let's say that you have a simple action in a controller and you double click over it and you start writing code, that is exactly the same as opening a Windows form, dragging a button or a simple button from Developer Express and creating the handler. So in the end, it's like you're writing your business logic directly in the UI. So for me, it's better to have helper classes. So you need test them later without the need of instantiating a SAF application. So that's my advice to where to put the business logic. Again, just last time I repeat this because we get this a lot. If it's small on the business object, if it's something like heavier, I will create a helper class so I can unit test it and I don't have to create a view controller to run the test. That's my advice. Dave, your turn.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say I'm a little more guilty of putting some logic into our setters, as long as it affects the current business object, and it's not something that should be handled with the controller necessarily. So as long as you're checking that it's not saving and not loading, you can have some assumption. Again, you're making an assumption that it is being set kind of at the UI level. Not always the case, but we do a little bit of that. What I see a lot of from our clients is that overuse of the onChanged method. And we get these onChanged methods that are massive. So you're talking like a couple thousand lines of code where they're trying to do something special inside the business object itself. And then we get the call saying, hey, I'm getting null reference exceptions. I'm getting, weird behavior. Yeah, you're doing things at the wrong time and in the wrong place. So, the more you can move to a controller, the better, absolutely. If there are things that just make sense, like you said, you're trying to pick out a unit price or capture historical data based on the value that's selected, we typically do some of that in our setters, even though it's not necessarily the best practice. We do have success with it. So we've kind of stuck with that bad habit over the years. So that's kind of where we're at. So controllers can handle everything else you need, because at that point you're not worried about whether or not you're running a custom piece of code on that business object that's unrelated to your application. You want it only to occur in your application. That's where the controllers make sense. You are inside your application. That's where you want the business logic to flow.
Yeah, and also, Javier, we were talking about this like yesterday or one of these days. We talk about this all the time in general, but there is something that I would like to have in XPO, and I have it there. I just have not have the time to finish it. Is that I would like the XPO objects or have a really base object like the custom object to be reactive. So I can tell, like, I just want the last event from all these chains of events. I don't want to trigger all the time where the on-change happened. So the reactive extension have some really neat stuff that including them on stuff would be really nice. I think that Apostolis have something like that, but I have not taken a look to it. And actually I would like to implement it myself so I can like kind of really understand it. But I have it on my plans that I want to create a nugget with a really base XPO object and a base object for SAF that is reactive. So I can handle like the stream of events. Like I just want the last time that they click over this or the last on change from the 50 on change that were triggered. Only at that moment I want to trigger my logic. So reactive extensions have some neat stuff. And if we can include them in XPO in general, I think it will be an amazing tool.
What I like about reactive extension is like, think about if it's automatic steering in airport or anywhere. Like there are people coming up or coming down, wherever you are standing up. You can say like, I just want when someone with the green t-shirt shows up, just let me know. I don't care about anybody else. So that's a great notification that you get and you only react to those specific events. So again, that's a nice approach. But coming back to our current questions, definitely it does vary, and I agree with Dave. Like if you have 2,000 lines in the on-chain, so refactor your code. Like again, we need to follow solid. We need to have single responsibility. That's too much. That's if you get that amount of code, you should start thinking your design. But again, like when I started working with SAF, the company that I was working was everything on all the business classes. There was no controller, there was nothing. And that was crazy. That was not maintainable, that was not testable, that was, so again, I agree with both. So, and I'm gonna start with the second question. The second question is about the database schema updates and the DVD updated and do I really need it and everything. So honestly, in my experience, the first time that I used the DB updater was when I met Jose. I never used the DB updater before in my life. I had Navicat, I have other tools from structure synchronization. I used to use module info only. And what I used to do is synchronize the structure of the database with the database that I run from Visual Studio with the client's databases. And then I copy the module info. I had a script just for that. So I never have the need to use the DB updated. So when I met Jose, he was using DB updated for everything. So it was like, why do I need that if I have this? But, and we're gonna get that to the last part. When we got to DevOps, the DB updated start getting really nice. It start getting a nice tool that we can integrate on our pipeline. So Jose, do you wanna expand on that?
Yeah, so basically, well, I had a lot of fights in El Salvador about that in my home country because we did a lot of government projects there. So they have this idea of that when you develop an application, you have the users, then you have this guy who is the operation administrative person or something like that. So he should be the guy who puts the application on the web server or in the share folder where the Windows forms are going to load it. And actually, he's the one on charge to do a query to the database, to do the initial data, to create the first user and to create the first role and so on. So I thought that, well, that should not be human. A person should not do that. An application should be self-contained. When you run it, when you start it, you want to have the first user. You don't want to go and do a query in the database and do that. And you need to make sure that the schema changes are not happening automatically. So that's the purpose of the DB updater tool actually is like the automatic updates will be turned off because if you see the code on a SAF application, you will see that it's asking if it's on debug mode, run the updater. If it's not on debug mode, don't run it. So that makes it safe. You run it during the development time, but you don't run it on release. So once you're on release, you want to make sure yourself that you trigger the functionality to create or update the schema and to create the initial data. So I thought that all of that should be self-contained, because let's think about this. You buy a software, an ERP, and you have the installer application. You run the installer. And when the installer finishes, you want to create your database and you want to create your first user and your first role. And for me, the automatic way to do that is to include it in the updater and just basically execute the updater after the installer finish. So you will have the database and your initial data. So I kind of like that. And I run into a lot of problems in El Salvador, because we have one of our customers that they were using Oracle and they have mixed architectures. So the computers were running 64 bits. The client for the database was 32 bits. So the updater went crazy because it is starting at 64-bit spread, but needs to access a 32 bits ADO.NET provider. So it went crazy. We recompiled it and so on. And actually kind of like the method. So much that I've been doing a lot of deploy in Linux lately. So the next videos that we're going to release are about deploying Blazor applications or staff Blazor applications on Linux. And I wanted to put a ticket yesterday, but I went to sleep like 4 a.m. in the morning because I was like really excited about the demo that I wanted to do today. So I realized that there is no updater for Linux. I guess no one uses it. I mean, no one uses the one for Windows. So I don't know if they're ever going to release one for Linux. But I would like to be able to do sudo and then write updater and write the config file. I mean, point to the config file and just run the updater. At the moment, what I do for Linux deployments is that I commented out those lines in the application. So Dennis, I think you're here. If you're listening to this, we want an updater tool for Linux. or a script for whatever. So I kind of want to do it myself, but it's a lot of work, and I'm really busy lately. So if you can put that in the DevExpress tools, it will be nice. So Javier,
Yeah,
I guess we're with today right now.
Yeah,
I mean,
I was mute for a second. Before I pass this question to Dave as well, so he can give us his point of view on the DB updated. So we have another answer on the chat about the first question about the business logic, and it's pretty much that the business logic really depends on the situation. In most cases, controllers with helpers is a really good way to handle it, but it's also possible to write logic in the setter if you are really careful. You know, if you also have to always keep in mind the is loading, is saving, and all those flags. But dangerous code inside business cluster or controller can be a disaster for testing and for the architecture. Is how SAF work and how your code is executed. So just want to reiterate that Dennis put on the chat. And if Dennis there, no pressure at all, but if at any point you want to turn your camera and speak, that's up to you. So Dave, DB updated.
Yeah, so I actually asked this question on the Facebook group about a month ago, because we typically don't touch it on our stuff. We normally have our applications automatically update, and we stick with the module info approach. I don't know if it's just old habit, because that's how we started back when XAF was released. But we found it works very well, with the exception of releasing both a WinForms and web application at the same time, where if you do a rebuild in between, they compete for that module info. So in those cases where we do support both platforms, we typically have the Windows application automatically do the update for us, and then the web application is just at the mercy of the Windows application. If it doesn't match, then the release as a whole was not successful. So they're far and few between issues when we do have that happen, where there is a mismatch, but You know, as a release cycle, it works quite well for us. I'm excited to hear that you are using the DB Updater tool through the DevOps process. So I'm excited to see how that works out in the long run, because I think that may be a better long-term solution.
And just to expand a little bit on that, I don't know if you guys have seen, and probably you guys have, because I don't know you guys, but the support ticket is my everyday reading breakfast moments. I every day go through all the new tickets, and I have learned a lot since I started doing that. It has become an habit of myself. So the DB Updater utility is already cheap as a NuGet package. So I think that from version 18.2, something like that. So nice, right? Okay. So let's close this and come back. Give me a second. So, okay, let's continue. Best practice on data representation. And this is a big one about when to use POCO non-persistent, how to avoid unnecessary data loading. And that's one of the things that we get that asked a lot about performance. Like our ListView doesn't have too many records and it's taking a lot of time to load our ListView. So if you think about this, SAF is for me the better framework that I have known, but abstract a lot of things for the new developer, for the beginner. And we always say, if you have to go and take a new Windows Forms and do all the queries by hand, you wouldn't abuse of the data loading. You wouldn't do 300 relationship and you wouldn't load invoice.customer. You wouldn't do that because you will have to do all those queries manually. So you have to think on the design, and you have to think on the architecture, and you have to think, do I need to be loading all of this data just to show a list view, just to show a report, just to show? So whoever wants to start, feel free to jump on that.
Okay, I guess I will start with this because we've been doing this also in the office lately, like especially this year, is that this is like every time that we meet with a customer, they say our application is slow, stuff is slow. And I can prove the opposite. I can prove that it's really fast. It depends on how you design it. We spend a lot of time in the office thinking about the design, since writing code for us is like kind of easy at the moment. I will say we've been doing .NET since 2002, so it's 18 years already. So to define a persistent class is not that difficult. It's just a matter of seconds if you use Cotrush, for example, which I use all the time. I cannot even write anything, not even my name, without Cotrush. So the thing is that since in SAF is so easy to create, or in XPO in general, the database structure that you want to create, you just do it in a few lines. If you want to add a new property, just a new line and so on. It's really, really easy. I think that most people should spend time doing load testing. Well, I will create my ORM, 5-10 classes for my main application, and I will load 1 million records and see how it works. See where it's like slow and which relationship are loaded. If you do that at the beginning because you have time, you don't have to write the UI, you don't have to write a lot of stuff, you're using SAF. A lot of stuff are done for you already. Spend some time in your ORM design, and it will pay greatly in the future. And I can tell this like with confidence because at the beginning of the year, we are designing an internal ERP system in our company in Bit Frameworks. And we do data loading with, I think, like 500,000 records. And it loaded in 1 second and something like that. So when someone tells me like stuff is slow, it's not. You need to take your design and take a look to it. Because as Javier said, in SAF and XPO and most of the ORMs, it's so easy to abuse of the lazy loading that you can load all your database if you want in just 1 line. So lazy loading is really neat, but it's a double-edged sword. I mean, it's really easy to use, but since it's so easy, you will abuse it. So I would say that the first thing that you need to do is pay attention to your design, and then it will work greatly. And also the second trick is that if you're trying to represent some data that is too complex to be represented, basically you just create a view in your database with whatever crazy query you have. And there is a lot of people who can do really complex queries. We have, I mean, Volvo in Italy is one of our customers. So the people from Volvo, the people who work there in the database, Claudio, for example, he can do amazing complex queries with good performance that will join like 5 objects. So the easiest way to do it, if your loading is too complex, you just create a view in your database, you make sure that it's running fine, and then you map it to a non-persistent object. And then there are like hundreds of examples on how to open a view with non-persistent objects. So that's the second trick. If it's too complex, go to a view, database view, and map it to a Poco object, and then show it in SAF. So those are my 2 cents in here. Dave, your turn.
Client recently trying to calculate inventory levels, and same issue, the massive quantity of data they're trying to constantly run calculations on. We managed to solve through a view that we then just look up the value based on that OID, and away we go. So that on a performance side, that works very, very well. In terms of the non-persistent data in general, you know, in the past we were doing a lot of domain objects. We have backpedaled on that now. It looks like DevExpress is also recommending alternative methods to that, I believe. And Dennis, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But you know, we like to mark our full business objects as non-persistent instead. That way you get the benefits of still bringing in persistent data as needed. You can work with it as if it's a persistent object, but then not commit any of it to the database. So we stick to those base objects as much as we can. Performance-wise, I mean, you kind of nailed it. You know, you do have the opportunity to be a little bit lazy, and because of that, you suffer. You need to put some thought into your design, right? If you're storing a large amount of data in a blob field, consider moving that to a separate object, right? So you only need to load consider the header information. Then when you actually need the content, you can grab that later on as a separate lookup. If you're doing complex calculations, are you going to do it on the loaded data, on the loaded collections? Are you going to run a calculated field, or a persistent alias, or are you going to use a view? Those are all really heavy considerations that you really need to get right from day one in order for things to be, to behave well. And we always say that, good design is the key to any successful application, right? Not so much on the UI end, but on the data end. So if you don't take the time to figure out how you want your business objects to work and behave, you're going to suffer down the road when you've written a bunch of controllers and customizations on top of that.
Just to expand a little bit on top of that, there is a episode on the Azure podcast about data access from Jeffrey Palermo and things, and he's talking about ORMs in general. He's talking about entity framework core, and one of the ORM, one of that access that he did and everything. And they asked him, hey, what do you think about lazy loading? And he right away say, don't do it. I would not do lazy loading. That confuse beginners. That makes them have the error of n+1 on the queries. They have the error of, and I don't agree with that suggestion, because for beginners, the ORM abstracts a lot and it helps you map your classes to your stable. It gives you a lot of, and I use XPO for everything. And now that XPO is in NetCore, I will put it on a fridge later on, like Jose say all the time. We could put it everywhere. But you do have to know how things are working under the hood. You do have to be aware of the data loading. You do have to be mindful of what you're doing. And if not, do a test. When you have a customer that wants everything, but also want your ListView to be blazing fast, just tell them, yeah, just put the price up. Okay, because you want every property on the column chooser. You want to have all your property. that is going to slow down things. So you just have to design for your business need. Do you really need this? If you don't need it, don't load it. If you don't need this, and there are a lot of things. I remember when SAF started with the data view, we had a list view that it was like 2-3 minutes, and we got it down like 10 seconds just to change to data view. The only change that we have to do after that is because we don't have the current object, just go and find object and get the current object. That's it. And we could do all the actions exactly the same. And the biggest example, I think we have a customer in Spain that they have like 65,000 records. And the list view was like 4 or 5 minutes. And we get it down like 4 seconds. But we have to do some trade-off. It's like, you don't need this. If you don't need this part in your, like, don't bring it. No, but maybe sometimes one user maybe will need it. No. If he will need it, let's put an action someplace else that he can click and we can bring the data that he needs. Let's do another design. And everything was great. Everything was happy. 90% of everyone was happy. Sometime now and then, someone asking, hey, I need this data that is not there. And we provided to them. So it's thinking about performance, not about making lines of code and put it there and have everything. Because I believe one thing that SAF is really good, but I believe that one thing, and I believe that for the bottom of my heart, is that sometimes we give too much to the customer. So sometimes we have to dial down instead of like, because then you have to support everything. So
actually, Javier, remember that we were talking last time with Manuel that there should be like a light skin mode where there is only one save action, where you don't have like save, and close, because the first question that you get from the customer is like, why do I have 3 saves? What does it mean? Even though it's obvious because the label said, I mean, you have to support that. Sometimes they want to export just to PDF, but they have like 10,000 options. And it's like, can you explain me each of those? No. I mean, either, for me, it would be like this. Either like, we have like end user documentation from DevExpress, so we don't have to do it ourselves. Why do we have to write how the grid export the data? I mean, they do have it for the technical person, but not for the end user. So we can just give like, take this, read it yourself, because otherwise you're in charge of that. The more you have, the more that you have to support. So it's more difficult. I mean, especially if you're a small shop, and most of us are like 4, 3, 5 programmers. I mean, you can be like 10 programmers. It's even worse. It's more difficult.
Have you ever been in a position that people ask you, what is this reset view settings, and why is it there, and why do I need it, and why, like, it's a really nice tool, but sometimes like if they don't need to care about that,
it's over functional, I would say, like, and that is good. That is good because that's what you want. But you need to be able to actually narrow it down. And we talk about this, I think, in all of our meetings, is that most of the time I spend more time hiding functionality than creating functionality. The functionality is already done. I mean, they did an amazing job. So I just need to hide like two save actions. So
and that's a great strategy, because then when the customer requires that functionality, you just turn it on and you didn't do nothing. And
I mean, it's like,
and you look good.
They can say like, hey, Javier, can you add a button that I can save and close at the same time? It's there already. It was save and close. You just enable it. But you don't have to put it at the beginning.
And
let me show me the manual for this action.
Let me come back to the chat real quick. And before I go to that, I want to say something. We have been fluctuating from 19 participants to 25 to 26 and down again and going back. And I just admit new people. I want to thank everybody for showing up. I know that you guys can watch the YouTube video later on, but I really appreciate you guys being here with us. No agenda, no dress code, having a beer, just conversation, putting a questions. I really enjoy this. This is like great for me. So there is a question on the chat. That's what I was going to start with. That does anyone has tested big data loads on SAF Blazor? And Jay said, he replied, say, I test about 3 million records and works great. So Jay said, I hope you're talking about Blazor, but that's really promising. And then down below, Dennis is expanding on that and say, Blazor UI relies on IQueryable. Our grids plus a smart data access library. So it says server mode by default. The Blazor is server mode by default, so it doesn't not matter how many records you are loading to the ListView. I don't know you guys, but for me that's music to my ear. That's
Yeah.
Look, I'm glad that I cannot kiss Saf right now because I will.
Yeah, and Dave, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's one thing when a framework potentially slows you down. That's not the case here. When you're doing things like searches on large data, that's when you're going to hit more of a roadblock, more so from like the SQL server side or from the database engine side, where if you don't have things like the large text optimization enabled, it's going to sit there and chew away on large data fields for quite a while, and that's where your slowdown kind of hits a hiccup. So I'm really glad to hear that. On the Blazor UI side, all these optimizations that are available through the platform, through the framework, are being taken advantage of. So that's really awesome to hear.
And this is I get excited for every little feature that Blazor, that SAF chips, but we test Blazor when it was coming up, Jose and I, and we did test on phones, we did test on computer, and the file attachment, the pictures was still not working. And like 2-3 weeks ago, we tested again, and you can attach the picture, you can get it from your camera, you can get it from the gallery. I can do so many applications right now that I can think of with just that feature. That's amazing. Again,
Javier, I'm going to interrupt here. Is regarding that, because I guess everyone is excited about that topic. Remember that at the moment we're doing a lot of research and development in our office, because we're doing deployments in Linux. A lot of deployment in Ubuntu 16 actually is the best. I test all of them. I test all the Linux. So now I think that we will have a training course for that how you should deploy a Blazor application on Linux using virtual hosting. So we want to show how you can host multiple applications in multiple domains in Linux. Those can be SAF application, Blazor application actually. And how you can use virtual hosting with Apache, and how you can use virtual hosting with Nginx. So we have that almost done and ready. All the tests are working. So also remember that we want to show the data loading on Linux and show okay, we have 30 gigabytes of RAM. Let's make this explode to see where it crashes.
And we want to see how many memory is the Postgres database taking, how many memory is the MySQL, how much resource is taking this. So we actually preparing for this meetup, and because like Manuel say, even if he's not here, that the demo gods sometimes are not helping us. We wanted to show today the SAF Blazor running in Linux, but again, it didn't work out.
We do have the implementation. It's we didn't have enough time to put it there and make sure that it runs for the demo. But
we'll do it for next time. We'll do it for next time.
Or we will have the video on the YouTube channel anyway, because I think it's really interesting.
And I want to also add, Denik say that to expand on what they say, we should not forget about the database itself. Database need maintenance, and believe me, that's a big thing that it has by me a few times, because I'm not for any means a database administrator. I do my best, but you do have to give some love to your database so they can start running smoothly. And he actually added a link about database optimization there, so feel free you guys to go there and take a look. But definitely, and having a database guy focus on your application is a really big plus. For
Javier, I will add something in here, because this is another question that we got a lot, and it's which engine is best for me? And everyone use SQL Server Express. That's quite common. And MySQL, I think that those are the most used, at least in our experience. In Latin America, everyone uses MySQL or SQL Server.
But you remember the issue that I personally had with one of my customers about SQL Express. We were using the audit trail, and we maxed out the 10 gigabytes, and we completely stopped middle operation, middle of the day of a point of sale store. That was a big emergency. That was crazy. So again, just throwing out there some experience.
Yeah,
that we had.
and also Javier, complete the story is that once you max out, you cannot start the engine. A lot of stuff don't work. So basically,
and believe me,
you are like in a big problem.
and deleting 6 million records is not 10 seconds. It's not 10 seconds. And every client waiting in there to pay, every client waiting there, and the client screaming at you. That's not a fun position to hide. So you guys, please don't make the mistakes that I did.
Yeah. So I will put like my 2 cents in here. Is like, okay, everyone tell like, oh, we can use SQL Server Express. We can use MySQL. Okay, MySQL and SQL Server Express, those are minimized versions of the real database. They don't use completely the CPUs as they should use it. They don't use the storage as they should use it. And they don't have the capacity. So sometimes I get questions like this. It's, Jose, I have this new server. It have like 300 gigabytes of RAM and so on, so on, so on. And everything is slow. Yes, because you're using SQL Express. You have like millions of records and you're only using like a quarter of a CPU. You maybe have 200 CPUs there, but you're only using like a quarter of one. So if you really want to use, I mean, you don't want to spend the money and you want to use a database engine that will be the same as the pay engine. I mean, the free engine will be the same as the pay engine. I would suggest that you go with Postgres because the free version of that is the same as the PowerDB that you buy. So as long as you know how to handle it, you can do all the crazy stuff. And it will be like you have the most expensive database ever. And you will not have caps on the CPUs, on the threading, or in the storage.
I will add something quickly. Of course, SQL Server is a prime citizen on Azure. And you know me, Jose, I always pushing for Azure in anything that I want to be. But Postgres is getting second spot there. They are adding a lot of support for Postgres, so there are a lot of things coming up there. So again, Postgres is a great choice. SQL Server will be my first one if we have resources. The second one will be Postgres.
I'll add to that too. Actually, if you're experiencing kind of long queries and you can't figure out why and you don't want to hire a DBA, a quick tip is to actually throw your database up in Azure, run some tests against it, and after a little while, the Microsoft engine will come back with some free advisories. You know, add an index here or change this to that, and it does help. Quick and easy.
Yeah, and really nice recommendation because they give you not one or two, they give you index here for it. So that's a really nice tool. Again, I'm a little biased, as you can tell. I'm a little biased from SAF, I'm a little biased from XPO, but I'm a little biased for Azure. It gives you a lot of nice tools to work with. All right, so the next question, we got this in our Facebook group. This is not something that I come up with or anything. We got actually that, and our suggestion is best practices in setting up multiple security roles and doing filtering based on role, and how to set up a multi-tenant environment. Jose,
okay, yeah, I will start with that. It's like, well, I know that that you can use like multiple nested roles, and well, that requires a lot of maintenance and a lot of setup. I remember that we have like in El Salvador, we only have like really enterprise customer, like or government type of customers. So they handle massive amount of data, and they have like crazy requirements all the time. So it's like, I remember we finished one project, really long project, difficult one. And it's like, okay, it's time to set up the application and someone needs to create the roles. Jose, take this document. There are like 40 roles that you need to create in your application. And I say like, no. That's not my job. Here's the manual. You can write the roles yourself, the 40 ones that you want. When they saw that they need to do it for themselves, they reduced it to like 4 roles. So nested roles are complicated somehow because you don't know when you are denying something that you're allowed in another role. So I will suggest against it if you are not familiar using those type of roles. If you know what you're doing, do it. I mean, stuff, if there is something that Dev Express have is like amazing quality in their controls and everything and in their flows. So if you really know what you're doing, go do nested roles, like compose a role from 2 roles, create another role, and it will work because it just works fine. But in the logistic way, if I'm the owner of that application, I will just make it simple. I will just make all roles should be top level. They should not contain nested or should not be composed by other roles. And that's it, basically. And I do the filtering either with a controller or with the security system. But I prefer to do it with a controller for one reason. In the security system, you depend on the setup. And you depend that the person make the setup correctly, that they put the right criteria and so on. If you cannot guarantee that, make it in code. Because the person who is writing the administrative person who is doing the roles might not understand what it means. So you either do it in a controller, or if you're like super advanced user, you can use a security system. But I will put the security system as a second option, not as a first one. So Dave, anything that you want to add there? You're welcome.
I mean, I've gone as far in a lot of applications as just defining one role. So there's still a collection on the permission policy user, but we expose a field that is your security role, and we typically do one-to-one. There are scenarios where people need something a little more complex, but those are pretty far and few between. We tell people, you can create security roles that take criteria into consideration to lock it down to the field level. They get extremely excited, right? Oh, wow, it's amazing. And really the security module available is nothing short of incredible. It's undergone a lot of changes over the years, but it's nothing short of amazing. With that, there is complexity. And in most cases, we're doing one-to-one. So you're an administrator, you're a power user, you're a regular user, you're a no access or read-only user. That's typically the approach we've taken over the years, and in most cases it works extremely well.
Yeah, actually here we have another stuff that we want to add is that we got that question a lot. Like, Jose, Javier, can you set up this role for me? I don't know how to do it. So I was talking with Javier one of these days and I told like, hey, Javier, you know what we need to do? We need to make a training course for how to administrate a SAF application, how you should deploy it, how you should create the roles. Nothing to do with the programmer. You get the assemblies. What do you do after that? Who is the person on the organization, on the company that you work for that will deploy your assemblies? How they should deploy it? How they should create the roles? How they should handle the UI difference? How they should set up, like, I don't know, Javier, you name it, because you're more like...
Let me expand on that. So the first thing that I want to say is there are about creating roles. I'm going to expand in different topics. I'm going to expand with Dave say. I'm going to expand with Jose say. The first one, two nice things that I have seen recently. One, I learned them for Dave. He showed me how to get and do a script from SQL Server that way we get all the roles and all the permission, everything that is already set up, so you can put it on the updater and it gets shipped with your application. So that was really good because you didn't have to be recreating all those permissions, all those roles for everyone. And the second one, and I think that I have it somewhere here, I was looking for it, I didn't find it, is one that is recently, is how to get, I think that Dennis posted that article, how to get the code from the role UI. So you go to the UI, you set up, and I did a video of that, so it's on my YouTube channel. I don't know what I was looking for. That you get all the the role set up on your UI, and then you just export that code. And they're actually a default template that is really nice, and you get that code and you put it on your application. It gets all the permissions, everything that you need there. But I also will say something. SAF, security system, and roles specifically are so powerful, so granular that you can do members, you can do criteria, you can do objects, that most end users, it gets overwhelmed. They don't know how to set it up. You are the one who set it up for them. They are the one who asking you for that. And now going to what Jose said, when I was in a company that we were doing a lot of implementation to customers, you know, like we have the ERP. Okay, we're good to go. There is a customer that just got that sign up, he paid. Now we have to implement it. Then we have to train them. So there was people that they were not developers at all, that they have to do the implementation, the training, all the support. And they didn't knew nothing about the model. So they have to do a lot of roles, a lot of views, a lot of things, and they didn't know how to approach that. So that's what Jose was saying, a course, a training for those people, as not as a developer mindset, but as a training, as an implementation person. Hey, if you need to do these models, configurations, do it here. If you need to set up this role, if you need to set up these permissions. And again, I still amazed of the amount of things that you can do in the roles things. Like you can do criteria, members, objects, everything. But it gets so cumbersome sometimes that and just remember, Yamachan has the previous security model that is really nice. So you can be testing different roles in your own user, so you can see how a technician looks at the application, how a manager looks at the application, how a sales guy looks at the application. So there are a lot of power on having that that in your hand. And again, and when we say multi-tenant, I start thinking a lot of things. We can start thinking application with a lot of people using it, but I can start thinking of the one database for each company, but they are sharing the same code and they are sharing the same role. I can start thinking the same database for all users, but that we have a company ID or a record that we can filter for those, and we have like a drop down. We say company 1, company 2, company 3. So there are a lot of variation on those, but we share the roles between those, and we filter the data because we cannot share the data from one company to the other one. So we have a lot of combinations there. So I just as a bottom line, best practice, it depends of your scenario, but you have so much power and so much features, so much options there that it's just a learning curve. And that's why I think that especially for implementation people, the training course would be great. And for developers, the post that Danny did, I'm gonna look for it. I have to see where it is. It should be, I shouldn't, before the meetup ends, I will find it. That how to get the role code from UI. That's when I saw that, it was like I have been waiting for this for a long time. Really nice generation. You get the code right away. Boom. You put it on the updater. You're good to go. You can ship it with your application. So that's my 2 cents. I don't know if anybody want to add a little more.
I would say on the multi-tenant side, that's really a bigger decision too, because security or not, if you're giving an end user the ability to modify those roles, that becomes an issue on the multi-tenant side of things. So we've put a couple systems in place where each client gets their own database. Again, it's an easy spin up of a new database just by adding a new account, using a very heavily customized object space provider. That works quite well for us. So if you're thinking about doing multi-tenant applications and you're interested in that, feel free to reach out to us and we can discuss that too.
Absolutely. And by the way, I was talking about finding the article, and then he already posted on the chat.
Dennis, but yeah.
So it's this one. Please, everyone, take a look at this. In my opinion, this is a beauty. This is nice. You can generate the code from the role and you put it on your updated and good to go. You can ship it with your application. That's it. Nothing crazy. Because I don't know if you have done all these roles in code one by one. It's cumbersome. is not pleasant. That's the what I would say. Okay, let's continue. Okay, model design and best practice. So when I started with SAF, one of the things that I always got, I always was asking, and I asked everyone, like, I even asked Jose. Jose, actually, Jose was one of the ones who trained me when I was starting. How is the models layers get applied? Like what is happening first? What is overriding that? What is overriding the other thing? When is the last one? Okay, if I store the models different in the database, I did a change here, I don't see it there. So that was until I completely understand all the time. I was like, can somebody please explain me this? So, Jose, you want to give a quick overview of that?
Sure. Basically, well, you know me, Javier, more than like other people here. I would say that I'm not an end user oriented person. I'm more like a background task type of person, or a Linux type of person that always get the complicated way to do this stuff. So in general, like since I was in SAF in day one, and since day one, and my main task was to make sure that everything was working, and that whenever there was a new version of SAF, that we can move everything. At that time, like, I don't know, 15 years ago, so a long time ago, I decided, like, okay, guys, what we need to do is to do everything in code. Never use the model editor, never, ever. Create an attribute, anything on code that can make your your application behave the same all the time. That you don't have to depend on copying the XML file or the piece of XML and put it in the model. Because long time ago, when people from developer perspective did some changes, they did like, okay, we did this, and then we did this on the model, then you need to put this piece of XML in the model. And at that moment, I thought, like, this is like hell, basically. So what we decide to do is like, okay, if something breaks, we don't want to recreate it in the model. What we want to do is like have everything in code that it will recreate itself somehow. So at that moment is where we will start using the generators in the model. Remember, Javier, that the first class that you took with me was reusable modules. And in that lesson, we learned about the generators, how SAF generate the nodes for each view, for each business object in the model. So at that moment, I thought this is the most sustainable way to generate stuff for the model. So we did a lot of extensions, helper classes, and our own generators to make everything in code, because I didn't like the designer at that time. At this moment, today, the model editor is amazing. It just works perfectly, at least if you're using .NET full, 4.6, 4.6.1, 4.6.2. In .NET Core, there's still some stuff that need to be worked out, but everything in .NET Core needs to be worked out at the moment.
Also, now that you say that, I remember when I first contacted you for my first class, I thought I knew SAF, and I was contacting just to make reusable modes, because I thought I want to pack all my reusable code and I want to use it. And I have learned so much, and those was like 4 years, 5 years, I don't remember. I have learned so much after that. I'm still learning every day that I was like, now I look back, I say, I didn't know nothing. I was asking for reusable mode. I should have been asking for best practices, like we're doing right now. So it's crazy. Just wanted to give that. And regarding that, yeah, again, Jose is old school, so he's always like, don't use the model. And I was always like, I have always used the model all my life. I don't.
I use the model only. That's the only thing that I do. I use the model.
I use the model a lot. So we found a middle point there, and I agree. Model has improved a lot. And one thing that I always wanted to have is the model for roles. So when I have a role, that role has the model that I want, the views that I want for everyone. And I understand now the complexity of doing that, and expand has something like that. But I know that when you have child roles, parents roles, and this type of combination, it can get a little cumbersome, those merge on the model. But I do still believe that's especially for when you are implementing, that's a good approach, because you say all my salesmen having the same view, and I don't want them to have another one. All my managers, all my technicians or whatever. So I do believe the model is great, and I actually am really excited, and I'm really proud of DevExpress with the model for .NET Core. With that one and Nugget package, that's a big improvement for CI/CD, for deployment, for build machines. That's crazy. You don't need to have your computer in the GAG with all the DLL assemblies. You pretty much have everything you need, wherever you need. I go to another computer, I just download restore my Nugget package, restore. So
Javier, you can tell the story that, remember that one time we have a call, and at that moment I was in Georgia, but not Georgia the state, Georgia the country, Tbilisi, like near Turkey. And I told Javier, I know how I can do this. I just need to install all Developer Express versions that exist and get the GAG files so I can compile against all the versions.
Yeah, and that time, like, let's make a library for DevExpress, and let's just install from version 13 to version 18, all the versions on our computer. Let's compile for each one by one, and let's publish this, because we can make money out of a product. People doesn't know that after you have a product is when the work starts. You have to do licensing, you have to do documentation, you have to do training, you have to do support, you have to, that's the beginning. But believe me, I remember Jose starting like
all the versions possible that exist.
For 7 days installing things just to get that working. And right now it's just like, let's put a build props, let's put the X version as a variable, let's pass it to the CS project, done. Any version we can handle. We can send a HTTP request to the Nugget, send our API key, get the new version, done. Hey, if you have not, if you have
a new tools also, Javier. Remember that.
Yeah, if you have not suffered it, you cannot get excited as I am right now just talking about it. But anyway, let's not get too deep on that. Let's keep on the model designer.
So I guess we should go to, unless they want to add something for number 5, maybe we should move to number 6 already.
I'll add one piece to number 5, which is attributes. Use attributes as much as you can, because then it's generated as part of the model in the assembly. So you don't have to apply those differences on top. And the number of attributes that are available to do everything from appearance rules, validation, even layout can all be done through attributes. And it's awesome. You can see everything that is related to your business objects right from within your business objects. And it just speeds up the whole process moving forward.
I wanna add something more, because I just read a message on the chat from Dennis. So I completely agree. So let me put it here on the screen. So about the roles for the model for roles. Let's say I want every manager to have the same role. So we do have this administrative UI where we say, okay, we have them. I set up the model for John that he has the role manager, and I will then copy that model difference and override it to every new manager, and that's what we do right now in this moment. Right now we go and say, okay, I wanna copy that, and it's working great. It's definitely a solution for that. So I don't say that we don't have a workaround, but that's one of the requests that all the implementation people were always asking, because let me tell you, a lot of time, those implementation people that they were not developers, they were not high paid, they were just installing the software and moving forward, they messed this a lot. They, instead of override the merge, instead of merge, they override, they choose the wrong client and they merge to something else. So we had a lot of crazy things, but the good thing is, like, as soon as they realize the mistake, they notify us and we fix it in 2 seconds, because this is a really, really nice tool. The import share models to get the models that you did on the VS, on Visual Studio. So again, it's, in my opinion, a matter of training the people that you are, and that's why the XAFers training about model management, about model difference, about how to use the model for implementation and training person will come in handy. I think that that's a skill that they need to have if they are implementing or training or doing any type of support in a SAF application.
I will say with the built-in model differences, I like it. We implemented it years ago before it became an out-of-the-box piece. The only concern I have with the current implementation is the shared model differences, where the differences that you make in the model within Visual Studio that you then push out doesn't always seem to get updated, and you have to do that import shared model differences. So we actually turned the shared storage off, and we always pull the shared model from what's distributed in the XAFML file.
Let me tell you something about that. Once I suggest that in my old company, and they completely declined it. You know why? Because what they used to do is, let's say that they want in a view a field that, I don't know, does like a green field. Let's change the color, something simple. They go to the shared difference, and I would say the step. I don't know why. I would say right top of my hand. They go to a user. They delete completely the model difference, and they copy the shared difference to that user. They change only that field because that was a blank model difference. They change only that field and copy back to the shared difference. And when they restart the application, it gets applied the shared difference, and then everything else, and all users got that green field. So without recompiling or doing anything else, you can have a change applied to all users using that shared difference. So it makes sense in some points to use it. So
absolutely, yeah. There's a couple of the improvement areas that could come up. So when you're exporting model differences, it just automatically spits it out to its default folder. Having it prompt for location would be kind of nice. Distributing it to those other users, so kind of overriding the other users, doing that by role. I'm not sure if that's built in there now or not, but like you said before, if you have a bunch of salespeople and you want them to have the same model, modify the differences and then ship it out to everybody in that role tends to be something we do quite a bit. So
okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So moving forward, let's go to source control. And I believe I actually put this comment here just in case. And actually, Manuel couldn't make it today, so I think it works out because he wanted to do a demo on Tasty and a demo on actually doing a unit test and easy test on stuff. So I think that testing at DevOps, we can leave it for the next meetup. We want to start keeping our community stand up for 2 hours because we get excited. We have a couple beers. I enjoy this conversation a lot. I can be talking here for like 3-4 hours, but it's not convenient for everybody with work and with everything else. And I appreciate everyone that is showing up here. So I think that we do source control. We do 15 more minutes, and at 12 we call it a day. And next one, we definitely focus on testing on DevOps, and we do really deep. We do a complete DevOps implementation. We do a complete testing. We do a tasty demo, and we go from there. And hopefully, I'm trying to convince Apostoli to do expand, because if we see our Facebook group, it has been posting about people using expand and that it's not working and people having some issues with them. So hopefully I'm able to convince Apostolic to at some point show up here with us to talk about the expand framework and everything. But let's just talk about source control. When Jose and I started working together, he used SVN a lot. And I was like, we should use GitHub, we should use GitHub. And now he's want to use more GitHub than me. So
yeah. So basically, Javier, first let me start from the beginning. Let's start in the year 2000. At that moment, no one was using anything. Your source controller was making a zip file of your directory, and that's it. We even have something in our office for Visual Basic 6 that you do the stuff by email. You do the merge and everything by email. And it was like a quite difficult time because, I mean, in the early 2000s, there was not that much internet and you cannot Google stuff. And I was living in El Salvador at that moment. So we went with SVN. It was fine. It was easy. And we set it up, I mean, like with no pain. And we stick with it for years and years and years to come. Even to all my customers, I told them, hey, you need to make a source controller, you need to use SVN. I use this extension for the studio and so on. But like maybe like 4 or 5 years ago when I met Javier, he told me like, no, you use Git. And it's like, no, I use SVN. It's nice, it's good, it works. And he told me, no, everyone is using Git now. It's the new stuff. And it's like, oh man, I don't want to learn something new. But then I did, and it paid greatly. I mean, like GitHub is amazing to do open source projects and to handle the documentation, the flow, all the branches and the stuff. I never used branches before. I know that SVN, they do have that concept also, but they don't see it in the same way. So I would say that moving to Git was a good step, was great. It was not as hard as it looks. At the beginning, it looks like black magic. I don't know why, but it was really easy to go from SVN to Git, especially because you can collaborate between more than one person. You can do merge, you can do pull requests. So your flow started becoming like more neat. So in the end, I would say that if any of you are using SVN, yes, SVN is great and it do the job. But if you're working with more than one person, SVN, for me, when I was just one single developer, it was amazing. But once you have to have like, okay, we have each person a branch, then we need to merge it. Then we need to do this and pull requests and so on, so on, so on. Then I thought like, well, maybe Git is better for that. And maybe it's not, but it's more popular at the moment. You can find thousands of articles about GitHub, Git in general. So I would say that for source controller, use Git. And if you're using SVN, it's also cool, as long as you're using something. Because sometimes I remember that, especially this happened in El Salvador a lot, in my home country, that because we did only like enterprise type of projects, like really like big enterprise. So the guys called you and said like, hey, you got the project, you will get the contract. We need to talk to you to see what are the practices that you do like during the development. So most of them believe that they are like really high end. It's like, you know, that we invented SQL. Yeah, I mean, we are like that type of level. But when I ask them, what do you use for source controller? It's like, oh, we use a zip file. That's our source controller. So then I thought like, well, then you really need to learn a lot of stuff, because if a zip file is your source controller and you cannot know who made the changes, who merged it, who did what, and you cannot see the list of changes, then your organization is not as technological advanced as you want to tell me. Because for me, source controller is the stepping stone on the foundation of a tech company. I cannot believe someone is using is owner of a tech company or is working at a tech company where they don't have source controller. If they don't have, then they really, really need to implement it. Life will be easier after that. At the beginning, it looks harder.
You remember when you have a Word document and you do 15 pages and something happened, you lose your power,
everything.
And you lost everything? That was crazy.
It's exactly the same case.
So let me expand on that. For me, the most important part about source controller, and forget whatever you're using, it's about contributions. It's about we are working together. You know what I'm working on. You are working on something else. We have a way to mesh. We have to work to, let's say, Llama chance models. Let's say ultra models. Let's say expand. Expand is a great example. You want to contribute. Let's fork it. Let's put. I remember when we put the ultra modules, Dennis did a fork and just fix a spelling or fix something simple, but that's a big thing for us. It's like someone that we look out to, like took a look at our code and just give a correction for us. And that's the same thing for everyone that is listening. You don't have to be a big developer. Like we all make mistakes, and if we can work together, we can make the community better, we can grow SAF. Like, believe me, if you have experience with SAF, share your knowledge, make an article, make a video. That's what all of this is about. Put something open source and we can contribute. If I put something out there and it's wrong, like, grown things get fixed quickly. If I realize that you did the mistake, I will tell you right away and you will fix it, you will learn. What it doesn't get fixed quickly is what it doesn't show, what it doesn't publish, what is not out there. So source controller gives you the way to do all those for pull requests, merge, all the things that we need. Like expand framework, I always look at it because it's crazy the amount of automation that Apostoli has done. A lot of PowerShell tasks that I have no idea what it's doing. A lot of crazy things, but that motivates me to learn more, to like, what is this happening? And same thing with all the SAF nuggets, with all the, let's get together as a community and let's collaborate. And that's what I think that source controller do, that I can be here in the US, Jose can be in Russia, Dave can be in Canada, another one can be in Italy, and we can work in the same project. We can merge things, we can work together, and we can give results. Because the whole issue about this, for most that I love SAF, is not about SAF. It's about giving real result to customers. It's about giving real solutions. It's about giving real solutions to real problems. And just to give, because I'm talking about good things that I like about source control, one thing, I think that the model in SAF, when we're doing merge, sometimes it gets cumbersome because there are some ID that you are not sure. So you have to be, the only thing that I will say that is you have to be careful on your merge conflict when you are merging some change that someone did in the model and some change that someone else did in the model. But all of that is just about putting a good system in place, a good source control strategy, a good things. If you have that in place, everything goes fluent. It's the same about naming variables. Like if everybody names variables different, we don't know what we're doing. Like, please, let's keep the same case, the same thing. It doesn't have to be beautiful, but it has to be consistent. So everybody, the next one who gets there, know what they have to do. So something like a style code, where we decide this is our rules of our company. It doesn't matter what it is. It's a big help. It might sound silly, but it's a big help. And source controller and making, let's say, Asm SAF. And I think that the Zoom controllers are in top of my Asm SAF. Let me try to pull that up. If not, I will do it quickly. Let's put my GitHub GG column. And I will put Asm SAF right here. Let's say this is a quick sample. This is nothing like just a repo that we put a lot of links of SAF, so we can have a, believe me, I will love when I started to have a place that I can go look for training, for reading, for repos, for demos, for samples. So like, I didn't have that. So I will definitely don't want any beginner to have the same issues that I have. So let's do this together. Let's please get here, fork my repo, do a pull request. Let's say, oh, I found this nice controller management to the book, our solution that Yamachan did, that actually I don't have it there. I have to put it because this is really good. Let's add the link there. Let's do, that's the whole best practice. If you want to get if you want to live with some best advice for best practice, is this one. Get involved in the community, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask a stupid question. Like they say, there is no stupid question. Let's get involved together and everything else will come together. Because when you start asking, when you start getting involved, you get the answer. Believe me, we are here to help. Sometimes we are busy with work, we are busy, we cannot answer right away, but you can be sure that as soon as we have some time, we can give you some pointers. We can, hey, read this, go there. That's what I will do. That's what I remember once, and Dave don't let me lie. Once I spent like, I don't know, 2 days trying to do something on SAF web, and I asked him, hey, why will you do this? And he didn't even tell me the answer. He said, can you look at this? I did it like half an hour.
And that's the thing about with ZAF, is that it's not difficult. None of this is difficult. It's knowing where to look. It's knowing how to do it in a ZAF way. Right? People ask all the time, hey, how do I do a custom editor? How do I incorporate my own forms into things? How do I add controls? It's not hard. right? You just have to know where to put it, and one of the XAF approaches to doing it, right? Are you doing a controlled detail item? Are you doing a property edit? Are you doing an action that just pops up a custom thing? They're all options. They're all doable. You just have to know where to look and know how to start. And that's where you're bang on. If you have those questions, reach out to us, ask us the question, and we may not give you the answer, but we'll point you in the right direction.
Exactly. And that's the best practice that we have said in the whole meetup today. And
Absolutely.
I believe that Jose always say, what I can bring to the table is not that I'm the better on SAF. I'm the one who has suffered the most. I'm the one who have tried the most, who have banged his head the most against the wall. What I can bring to the table is tell you, hey, I tried that 200 times and it didn't work. Try this and let me know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually like that. I mean, well, you know that Javier, you know more than anyone that we people reach out to us a lot. We got questions from all over the world. It's not that we are doing anything magical, and SAF is not magical at all. It's just as Manuel said, it's just another .NET application. The more that you know .NET in general, the easier that SAF will be for you. If you have ever read that book from, I always forget here, you always remember the name.
No, it's right here. You see, that's why we have awesome.
Yeah, that's why we have also. It's like, if you have ever read that book, everything will be like crystal clear for you. All the design patterns that SAF and XPO use, or most of them, are in that book. If you really want to understand the deep of how it works, and the deep is not that deep, it's quite simple. I mean, but they spend a lot of time testing, failing, and suffering through it. It's like, read that book. Everything will be like crystal clear for you in the end. And also, there is another stuff that we get a lot in our office. It's like, SAF doesn't do this, XPO doesn't do this, it doesn't work this way. What does this mean? And a lot of time is that the knowledge of the other programmer or the customer or the other company, whatever you name it, on .NET is quite basic. So the more you understand how .NET works, the easier it will be for you to understand how SAF and XPO works, especially because they try to follow all the best practices. So basically, if you see the super center of XPO or SAF or DevExpress in general, that is like going to university for best practices. If you look deep enough, that will make you a good programmer, because everything that they do, they try to follow the most either convenient practices, the most practices that are related to performance, that have good performance, and a good design patterns. So in general, like, just go to the support center, as you do, Javier. Like, I remember that for years, that was my morning. I woke up, I went to the office, coffee, check the tickets.
No, that's
everything that happened, and I want to see.
That's still my university is the support ticket. Every day I read all the tickets, and not only that. Besides that, every day I'm still learning something new that I find that there are a lot of times that I have been trying to do something, but I haven't had the time, and I will do it later. And then I find the answer on the support ticket. I also find things that I have never thought about, like people trying interesting things that you never thought. Again, we together, because that's a way to be in the community, seeing what everybody else is doing, what everybody is trying. And if you see my teacher, that's Yama-chan, that's Cold Manuel, that's the community here from the DevExpress team. So I do believe in that. That power is really powerful. And I think that for the first time, we're going to stick to the 2 hours, because we always go over time. Yeah. And I could continue talking, especially with the beer. But the first thing, I appreciate everyone showing up. I appreciate that we're going to publish the video later on YouTube, and you guys prefer to hear the interaction. I appreciate about all the questions, and please feel free to send us a message to keep asking questions, to be on the Facebook group, to subscribe to XAFer Weekly, to use Yamachan code snippet, to see Manuel tasting. Let's support Manuel. I think that's a great idea. Let's see where that goes, but it's really interesting. And let me just read one other comment on the chat. Juan Santiago Ojeda said that the master in software engineering in Argentina are based in Martin Fowler's books. That are the books that we were just talking about. That's a book that I really recommend. It has really good practice, really good designs. And the next meetup, we're going to focus on testing and DevOps. If everybody's agreeing on it, you can always add more suggestions on our Facebook group, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Getter. We try to accommodate as much as we can to everybody. Maybe we're getting big. We're getting and that's really exciting for me. We're getting to almost 500 on Facebook, and we're getting a few here. So at some point, we might not get to everyone in just one meetup, but we're going to get to them maybe in the next one, maybe in a video, maybe in an email, on everything. So let me, and this is, I don't know why I didn't say that. Reading the source code, and then he just put that, is one of the other ways that I have learned a lot. And I remember when I contact Jose for the first time to do my reusable models, and he say, just go and check how they did the reports model. Check the code from bottom and down. Check it completely, and you will see how DevExpress does a reusable model. So definitely checking. And Dennis, I will put you on the spot a little bit here. One thing that I would like at some point is to have a solution of SAF with all the projects that we don't have. Like right now, if I want to have all my projects from SAF, from the code in my Visual Studio, I have to go one by one, all the projects, and there are a lot of them. At some point, I don't know if that's going to be possible. I would like to have a solution file that has all the SAF. And of course, there is nothing that I see more value of than the license of DevExpress. You get that right away in your first project, in everything else. So, and I always do this example. I have done it, I think, here a couple of times. I have said it to Dave. I have said it to Jose. The first time that I did a ticket for DevExpress, I say like, hey, I'm not sure how this is working. And they reply with a complete demo example, everything working for me. I didn't have to do anything. I just copied that and put it on my project. I was like, this is a nice support. I haven't found that anywhere. So DevExpress support is an extension of your company. And that's why we are, that's why we are so passionate about that. It's not because we are, I don't know, biased. It's because they have earned it. So
yeah, actually, one of my experiences there is that I remember I did a system to handle construction companies. You know that, I mean, again, that was El Salvador. They make constructions all over the Caribbean, like Curacao, Aruba, those places. And they asked me, like, can you do this system like quite fast, because we need to go to that island and start making the building, but we need to have like some control over it. And I said, like, yeah, well, I can do it. Like, and the other guy who was working with me at that project was my friend from high school, from the university. I don't remember. Well, from both actually, Goose. And we did it like in 3 days. And they asked me like, how many programmers you have in your company? It's like, I'm just me. It's like, but we asked like 10 other companies to do this. They took like 1 year and they showed me one screen. And in 3 days, you show me everything that I need to know from my system. It's like, well, I'm using the right tools.
exactly.
So that's the main difference.
And I will say something more. There is no project that I work on that I don't use SAF in some way or another one. If I use only a Blazor project, only Blazor, no SAF, I will do an admin tool with SAF. If I use a Xamarin, I use a SAF backend with SAF, so create the database for me. I'm not a DB admin, but I do my database with SAF and I manage it from there. If I do, I don't know. If I do a game for my daughter, I will put something in SAF there for her. Everything that I do it with SAF. So definitely, that's what I breathe and
yeah,
like.
it's actually like having a big team on your back. And I remember that, well, in El Salvador, salaries are really low. Like the minimum wage is like $200. So you think like I have to buy a 2,000 $200 license. You think it's a lot of money, but it paid off greatly. And I mean, you might be just one person, but it will look like you have all Microsoft in your back working with you. So when you compare the solution that we were able to create with the other solution in the market, in the Salvadorian market, Latin American, Central American market, they look like a kid that is 4-year-old draws some stuff. That's how the other applications look. And then we have our application that looks like Office 2000, something like Ribbon, all this stuff. So it's like, they could not believe that I was an organization of just one person at that moment.
And do you remember the history, Jose, that I told you that I went to apply for a company that they were paying a lot of money? And I say, what the heck? I will at least apply. I want to see, I want to feel that I have the skills to do it. I got there, they explained me the project, they present me to the whole team, and they were paying a lot of money for a developer. And when they showed me everything that they did, and they have been working like 2 years, I say without any arrogantness, I don't want to be arrogant, I don't want to sound, cocky. I say, I can do that in 3 months. After I saw everything, they have a lot of dashboards, a lot of reports, they have a lot of, and I'm not saying it's a different way of doing things, but in my mind, it's like, you don't want to pay a license and you're paying how much a developer for a year for doing something for 2 years, I can do in 3 months, 4 months.
Yeah, and also it's like people say like, no, I want to do my own ORM. Yes, it's harder than you think. I mean, it looks easy at the beginning, but then you have these people from developer experience that have been working for 20 years on that, having hundreds of millions of, I don't know how many tickets they have about anything. And the product is so neat at the moment that for you to reach that level, it will be almost impossible. Buy it. I mean, get that money from your pocket.
It's like,
it will pay off.
It's like trying to do Prism in Xamarin. Come on.
Yeah,
that's done, pasted, and good to go. Okay, guys, I don't want to keep going with.
Yeah, Javier, just one stuff before we close. We didn't talk about the beers that we're drinking today. So we're drinking Canadian stuff again, I think.
Yeah,
Like Canada.
This is the I asked Dave before buying this. This is a competition for the Molson Canadian. I was looking for a Canadian or German, and there was no German there, and I couldn't contact Manuel to give me some recommendations. So I asked Dave, hey, what about this one? He said, hey, this is decent. It's not the greatest one, but.
So the name is Blue or Labatt.
Labatt is the brewery, and the beer brand is
Blue.
They have more than, they have blue and other colors or other names.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's good that we have different beers each time. When I'm back to Russia one day when the borders open, I will have Medobuja, which is like honey beer. I don't know if they have it in the States or in Canada.
We're gonna get the Gooser that Dennis and Manuel like, and there is another one that Manuel told me that is the Maruare. I don't remember the name. That we'll get it at some point.
Yeah, for the next meetup. Okay, so I guess that's everything, guys. Javier, if you want to do the closing.
Okay, again, everyone, best practice. Get involved in the community. Thank you for being here. See you in the next second quarter of next month.
Okay, bye guys.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.